Hey lovers, this is Bexi, the Wild Moon Sessions founder and creator. If you are enjoying the Nourish Your Soul podcast, please head over to the Patreon page and make a donation. You can either subscribe to the Nourish Your Soul podcast community for £6 a month, or you can make a donation of your choice and support this podcast. Part of the donations will be going to projects all over the world, and this is an idea of creating a holistic community via beautiful conversation and connection all over the world. So this has a big impact and I appreciate you. You can also support me by clicking subscribe below and by pressing the like button and helping others find these videos and these beautiful conversations and nourishing conversations. Thank you so much for your support in advance. I hope you love the next episode. Sending so much love to you. Hello and welcome to this Wild Moon Sessions podcast, conversations to nourish your soul. I am Bexi, I am your host, and today I'm really called to talk to you about death and the life cycle and seeing death as a part of life. My maternal grandmother actually said to me a long time ago, probably when I was a teenager, death is a part of life, Rebecca. And this is something that I feel as though I've been learning, integrating, and knowing for such a long time. And I've experienced death in many ways, and I am experiencing death right now. And there are so many lessons within it, and I really wanted to acknowledge them and hope that helps other people acknowledge it within their process and within their life too. Honestly, I'm not going to be pausing on losing a person in the physical sense, so a person leaving this planet in the physical death sense. I'm actually going to, because that is incredibly personal and could be a podcast for every single person on this planet. It's an incredibly personal process and would take so much time to acknowledge. However, I am going to be talking about death as a cyclical pattern that appears in our life, and actually it being the natural process of things, the natural process of every life form, every being. And as I say this, you can see that my Christmas cacti behind me is actually flowering, and these flowers don't last for very long. And this always reminds me of like the fragility of things when they flower and fall and flower and fall, and they're still always growing even when they let go of their flowers and they shed their flowers. And I think that's such a profound reflection of everything that is within us too. Another reason why I really wanted to talk about death is that I personally feel and see that there are lots of different relationships to it. You know, the amazing Halloween ceremony in Mexico, the Day of the Dead. That's incredible because it's about celebrating all those who have passed, and it's incredible. That's like celebrating death as a passage of life. For me, death in our Western culture, we don't always acknowledge the different forms of death beyond physical. And with that in mind, I really wanted to talk about death and change being the same thing. They are synonymous. And death is change is death. So anything that we experience that changes within us, within our surroundings, within our relationships, that is all a little and a small death of kinds, and that's important to acknowledge. And this is where these processes, cycles of life and patterns actually allow us to experience things in different ways once we acknowledge them. And I do want to actually share a book with you which acknowledges this. And that's Women Who Run with the Wolves. If you don't already have it, I really recommend this book. I'm going to do a separate podcast on this actual book, but it talks about the petit mort, which is obviously mini death. And it talks about it as a sort of, on a timeline, you would have multiples of these. It's not just, they are parts of your life which have changed and transformed, and that actually acknowledging that little death is a really powerful thing, because again, you get to see it as the transformation that it is, and how you have changed and what has changed you. So I would really recommend this book, but just the notion of petit mort is really, really important. And it's something that I feel, as I talk through this, I'm going to constantly come back to. Having a relationship with death in a really healthy and actually sometimes empowering way. It can be a very empowering thing. So I did want to talk about death and change, as I've said, and really death can be change, but usually it's most impactful to us when it's to do with our existence, to do with our identity, to do with our ego, to do with the formula of life that we've created for ourselves, which keeps us in our social, personal, and societal functioning. And I wanted to share this in this moment specifically because obviously post global pandemic, when everything's opening up, there are lots of people acknowledging that the previous ways didn't work, and actually jumping back into those ways is not what they want to do, and they want to change. And this is a death of kinds, because actually as a global society we've experienced something that's been very profound, and it takes a lot of emotional processing. However, it's more that when you come back to meet that usual reality, you realize the death that you might have been through, or you realize what doesn't fit the jigsaw piece puzzle that is your life. And that is natural. That is really, really, really natural. And I just want to acknowledge anybody who feels that, because actually there's been a lot of psychological acknowledgement that, you know, when people are coming back out into society after being in a state of hibernation for a long period, like the pandemic, it can actually overstimulate our nervous system. It can overstimulate us psychologically, because we are used to having less stimulation, and all of a sudden it's overstimulated in comparison, and actually that can lead to burnout. So I feel like this is really, really important to acknowledge, because we also have to accept the change in us, the change as we move forward, and the death that we feel in relation to the old, in relation to the previous, in relation to ourselves. And like I say, I want to desensitize this word, because actually it's an incredibly powerful thing. And obviously people associate it with a lot of pain, and a lot of feeling, and I am, you know, that's absolutely valid. That's completely valid. And it's incredibly powerful, in the sense that when you see this pattern, you can really, really sit with yourself in a different way. So death can look and feel very different to everybody, but I just wanted to go through and acknowledge a couple of things that I actually feel is the process of death that I've been through most of all. That not necessarily physical, it's the other parts of life that have transformed and changed and died, with relation to growing up, you know, And before I begin, this also comes back to when we are actually born. Some people, or there are some trains of thought that believe that that is a mini death, because you're going from a womb where you are completely held, you are completely provided for, you are sustained, it's a place of ultimate sustenance. And when you are born, that is seen as a mini death, because you are coming out into a world where you have to learn to breathe, cry, communicate, express. You have to learn to survive, or you have to learn to thrive as well. And you have to learn how to be. Yeah. So you have to learn how to feed and eat and all of the other things. So that is seen as a mini death, and that is at the beginning of our lives. So I do want to just present an idea to you that as you grow up, there might be things that as a child you felt like, oh, this feels strange, it's change and I'm not sure how I like it. And you might have consulted, you might have shared that with your brother, your sister, your family, your grandparents, whoever was your caregiver. And they might have said, oh, that's okay, it's normal. It's okay, it's normal. And in that sense, you might not have thought about that. So it might be going to school, you might not have wanted to go to school. It might be, you growing up and changing friendship groups. It might be you going to different schools than your friends. It might be realizing you don't want to do that hobby anymore, or you don't want to dance with that crew anymore, you want to try a different style, or it might be that you've grown up and into a career path that is incredibly different to all of your friends, and you're all dispersing across the globe and across the country, going and doing different things and celebrating your uniqueness. All of these things are mini deaths, and they are change, and they help you grow. They absolutely help you grow. And sometimes we don't acknowledge those, because as we grow up, we see these celebrations, the 16th, the 18th, the 21st, even the 30th, anywhere through to that age, people are celebrating, oh, wow, you're growing up, life is great, all this change is fantastic. And people, that isn't associated with death. However, everything that is change is a mini death. And with that being said, you might have achieved something huge that you absolutely wanted to achieve, and you've had this huge peak experience in your life, and then afterwards everything feels so empty. It might be graduating, it might be, I don't know, climbing a mountain, it might be doing 30 days of silence, there's so many things that you might have dreamed and dreamt up, and they were a peak experience for you, and now they're not there. So there's lots of different versions of it, but these are all classed as, growing experiences. And growing, change, death, they're all the same thing. The mini deaths help you grow. They help you transform and move into a different part of yourself. And this is something that I just want to allow you to ruminate on as we explore more. So for me, I think the next categories that I talk about, just feel into it and think about whether you have experienced this, and you might have done, and this might really, really resonate with you. So it might be a death of a friendship or a relationship of any kind. It might be a death of a career or aspirations or a childhood dream. Everybody talks about, I remember being in school, what do you want to become when you're older? And everybody talks about, oh, I want to become a fireman or a footballer or a, basketballer. I really wanted to be a marine biologist. And I got to school in my secondary school and I realized, I just feel like I'm going to have to be really good at science to do this. And obviously I actually just really wanted to have a creative career. And that was a mini death for me, because I realized I wouldn't be able to go and basically swim with marine animals every day and have that as my career. So it, you know, it's realization, and that's a mini death. Death of one's own familiar identity or ego. So if you have related to yourself in a certain way or seen yourself in a certain way, and all of a sudden those curtains drop, the masks drop, and you realize truly who you are and what you need, that can really be quite a death, because you realize exactly who you are, and that maybe there were masks that you did wear and you're a bit tired of wearing them, and you're taking them off and really unveiling who you truly are. And that can be associated as well with a spiritual awakening or an awakening of kinds, but really it's an awakening to yourself, because we are spiritual inherently. Death of how others relate to you and their perceptions. This is a huge one. This is freedom. This is such a freeing death, because actually when you realize that people perceive you in the way that they perceive you, and that has nothing to do with you, it really allows you to go, oh, well, then it's not about how they relate to me. It's just about my core being. And I just am, you know, I don't need to function in certain ways to be approved of, etc., etc., etc. Another one, death of feeling safe or safety. So you might have had a traumatic event in your life, and that's valid. All of these are valid. You might feel less safe in certain places, or you might just feel less safe within yourself. That's a death. So the next one, growing up, life and people changing. So growing apart from friends, you know, that again, that goes back to the death of friendship and relationship. It all is just a transformation, because you change, therefore everybody else changes, and therefore everything flows with that change. Change, so becoming a parent or an adult and growing up generally, that can be really hard. I remember being on my own on a different continent to where I was born. So I was living in the States, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm like fully responsible for myself. And it was kind of like I'm now responsible for doing life admin, for taking care of myself. And this was when I've had my first proper job, and I felt like I was able to do that. And all of a sudden it was a different relationship. And I'd realized, oh, I've hit adulthood. Like, this is it. Like, I'm here. And I think there's definitely a mini death and a change in yourself when you do get there. And adulthood looks very different to everybody, but there are different stages to it where things just click in. And that was a moment for me. I felt, wow, okay, you're right. Yeah, this is it. For better, for worse, you know, that was a feeling to feel. Changing or moving your home. So moving to a different country, obviously I've done that. Moving homes, you know, this massively links to the Nicole LePera book. And she talks about the homeostatic impulse, which is the psychology of keeping you safe. And then there's the allostatic change. And the allostatic change is taking what keeps you safe and changing it. So they always say the most stressful parts of your life is when you're moving home. You know, that's one of the biggest things that you can do, and it's stressful. Let's just keep it there for now. That's huge, because you're changing your entire environment. So when you think, if you look around a room, look to all four corners of your room, and it's a familiar environment, your whole body relaxes. These are things to consider. But moving and familiarizing yourself with a new way of being, that's a death of kinds, because you might have attached memories to a certain place. You might have attached memories to a certain home. You might have attached memories to feelings of freedom to a certain place. And often when you move, homes. Some people might not feel this, they might love moving homes constantly, but often when we change our living environment, that is the challenge. It's a challenge to, everybody probably feels like they can't quite relax on the first night. They're getting used to being there. It is a process, and that is a death of kinds. It definitely is. Beyond that, death of beliefs and concepts. So this might be something that you, like, I was baptized a Catholic and raised as a Catholic, and I now don't identify as a Catholic at all. And understanding my relationship to that and the limiting side of it for myself, that was a death for me. Concepts, it might be beyond that, but essentially it's like, maybe it's a collective belief that you've had with somebody. That can be really, really important. So whether it's friends, whether it's family, all of these things are really, really important. And when you realize that that's either not happening, or it's not true for you, or it's not healthy for you, that's a death. That's hard. And we'll go into that a little bit more. So death of old dreams or childhood desires. So that's the childhood dreaming. We all want to have that dream. Death of being relevant. So as I'm moving into these, we're talking more about the social aspect of our existence, and actually the social aspect of us surviving. So our brain knows that when we are social, we are more likely to survive. And with that said, we inherently want to be part of have social standing and be part of a social group. So if you've gone through an ego death and you don't have identity with any of this, you'll understand what I'm going to say, because ultimately when you step away from that social identity, you realize that you don't need to identify with anything. And actually that social identity is there to help people connect. And you can absolutely choose to, but actually being able to and stepping back from a social identity is incredibly challenging, because it activates, it's a bit like feeling safe. You want to feel safe and you want to feel held, and community is all about that. But it doesn't, if you have a particular identity that's attached to it, and you say, for example, in the simplest form, you used to go out drinking and partying. When I was 17, I used to go drinking and partying with my friends, and all of a sudden I wasn't going to drink, and that changed my entire relationship with the entire social scene that I was part of, and how I functioned in that social scene as well. And this actually happened when I was 18. I stopped drinking for a year and a half, under advice. And I used to just eat sweets and sugar and give myself a sugar rush, but it changes your relationship with it. It gives you a different perspective. And often people can be part of social scenes and all of a sudden they think, this just isn't working for me anymore, and I'm not enjoying it. Or you feel a physical aversion to something, or you might have like a social interaction which is challenging, and that makes you feel, I'm not sure that this is right for me anymore. That's incredibly challenging, and it's natural for you to feel that challenge. And that is a version of allostatic change as well, because it challenges us to function in a different way and find safety in a different way. Beyond that, so that really, really covers being the idea of a social outcast. I don't want to say that in a social outcast. I think that's a concept, really, because when we're whole in ourselves, we don't need to feel like an outcast. But if you do choose something other than the status quo, or you realize that you are inherently different to your family, for example, I'm a great example of that. You realize that there's a massive death, and there's a grief process with it. And when you do choose something that's different to other people, or not accepted, or, you know, like not generally accepted, this is where it can really trigger that not feeling safe, or it makes you feel unsure, like you've just, if to give you an analogy, if you feel as though, you know, the different parts of yourself are anchored in different places, right? And the more that you lift up an anchor, the more that you're untethered. So it can make you feel a bit wobbly and a bit unsure, but that's okay. That's a really, really natural feeling. And I just want to say I'm right there with you, because that's something that I've been experiencing recently, and something that I know to be a pattern when you go through these experiences, because I'm, you know, I understand this pattern of death because of the amount of times I've been through it. So I just want to really, really authentically share that it's a natural feeling to feel a bit wobbly in those moments. So again, if we move on, death of passivity, what do I mean by that? If you live a passive life and you just kind of like accept everything as normal and healthy and all of those things, that's not necessarily saying you are passive. It just means that if you know it, essentially you've just kind of like accepted everything into your sphere without considering whether it's good or bad for you, you know, good or bad, but for you, good or bad. It might mean that, you know, what do I mean by death of that? It might mean that you realize, actually, I'm not sure that this is good for me. And it's you standing up and being able to express what is right for you. So it's not just accepting what you're told, it's having like an active relationship with what is right for you. And with that, death of agreeability, you know, everybody goes through this. I feel like when they go through their teenage years, there's a definite move and progress from having to agree or agreeing, you know, with your caregivers, or for whatever situation you have with your friends, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, no, my opinion matters, and I actually am going to express something different, which is valuable to me. And this is often where we can find that actually this is important for me to be heard, and I feel differently, and this is where we can express what that feels like. So that can also lead to, like, you know, personal rebellion, because you want to be heard, and a rebellious spirit. That's it. Again, that's a different podcast, but it is, you know, like the being able to really, really just express what you need and express your opinion and be heard. That is that, you know, you're moving from a place of or you might be moving from a place of agreeing with people, or you might be moving from a place of disagreeing with people to actually thinking, oh no, let me hold these two opinions together and have my own, you know, something that I've talked about in other podcasts too. And the last one that I've written down is just this idea of dying to yourself over and over again. And what do I mean by that? You know, a lot of people that have been on this podcast, they will talk about the multiple lifetimes that they feel like they've had in this life. And I just want to say that that's a really natural feeling. You know, we are here to become all of the different versions of ourselves, and really embody that. And that means change. That means that we embody so many different elements of ourselves to get where we're going. And often along the way, we get cues or nudges or pushes, or what feels like I've been thrown into a river and now I've just got to surrender to where I'm going. But that's the kind, you know, you'll go through life and those things do happen, and it really, really comes back to what it's asking you to let go of or change. And change, like I say, is a form of death. So within all of these deaths, obviously talking about existence, there's personal, there's social, and there's societal, and there's probably more than that. But those three things I think are really important, because when anything questions our existence, it can feel really scary. And for that reason, social standing can be very difficult. But dying to yourself over and over again, what do I mean by this? It's that personal existence, it's your physical existence. So it might be that you have you might hurt yourself and you can't actually function in the same way, and you have to change your relationship with how you're moving. Or the personal existence, it might be to do with your identity. So you might have identified as a creative fashion designer, and then you've gone through and gone, oh, actually, I'm not at that point anymore, and I'm okay to shed that layer and become something else. It might be that you have identified as being, if we go back to the Nicole LePera book, you might have identified with being a caregiver or a people pleaser, and these fundamental aspects of yourself have to be shed in order for you to actually be able to move forward from an authentic place within you. Now, the reason why that dying to yourself over and over again, why I wanted to bring that up, is because death is a void. Change creates a void. It creates an unknown place. And sometimes change is fluid and you go straight into the next thing. And sometimes these more profound deaths, these existential things, they feel uncomfortable and they feel like a void. And honestly, when faced with this, we humans, and many people generally, the tendency is to fill the void rather than sit with it. And what do I mean by that? So I might, if I lost one social group and shed one social group, I might just replace it with another immediately. Whereas if I sit with that and really think, what do I want out of my social life? And what am I nourished by socially? And how can I nourish myself by having a nourishing social life? That then gives me the grounding to know how to move forward and what to look for in the next social interaction that I have. In another sense, death, sitting with that void, so whether it's personal, whether it's just lots of feeling and you're not sure how to move through, or whether it's just uncomfortable and it's quiet and you're not sure what's going to come in and what the future's going to hold, actually that moment of quiet is so powerful. And I just want to empower you to sit with it, to sit with the quiet, to allow yourself space. Because the more that you sit with that, the more that you really center into the foundations of who you are, that are eternal, that will always be there. The world will always be there for you to go and interact with. And this is always here for you to interact with. In these particular moments, there's so much fertility in the quietude of your heart, your soul, your mind. And actually, this is where we can go to renew our sense of self. So rather than filling the void, we sit with it to appreciate the power that we are. We can sit with it and appreciate that we know ourselves more and less each day, and really understand that in order for us to transform fully, this is the actual shortcut. This is the shortcut to the best next version of what I really, really want in my life, because that quiet allows you to fast track there. It really does. And I'm just gonna ask you to take a nice deep breath after that, because when you ruminate in that, let's just ruminate for a moment on that. That quietude and the place where you go to within is only for you, and nobody else can go there. And that quietude and the messages that come through in those moments are clear, they have clarity, and they allow you to clear your path to moving forward in your life, to embody your fullest potential, to embody your fullest feeling of you in this moment today. And that is so, so, so powerful, so powerful. To sit with the discomfort is incredibly powerful, because ultimately you go through that, and then the trickles of light actually start to enter your heart, and you realize what is next. With that being said, in that moment of quietude, you are actually holding space for yourself. That is a level of self-care. That's a deep, deep, deep level of self-care. And you're holding space for yourself and for your future to arrive, rather than knowing what is next. The knowing is already there. And sometimes the quietude allows it to just become clearer without all of the noise of doing and progressing. And with that, it's really important to let yourself know that you're safe in those places, that you are. And then it's natural, it's a really natural process to sit with that. And it might feel like you're in darkness, and just think about looking up into the night sky. The majority of it is dark matter, and then there are flickers of light. So really think, sometimes it's becoming comfortable in those very fertile, dark places, to know that even when you feel like something is dying, or you have an overwhelming feeling of things changing and it being too much to comprehend, there are places within yourself that are ready. They are ready, and sometimes you just have to give them space and time. And I just want to say, if you are going through one of those life cycles, I'm right there with you. And I will say that, they are very, very, very powerful, and they are cyclical. And it does, understanding that pattern allows you to know that allows you to identify where you are in it as well, without analyzing it, but just appreciating it and honoring yourself and giving yourself the time, gifting yourself the time. So, so important, so that you can come out of that other side and feel, oh yeah, I have created full awareness around myself, and this is exactly what I want to do next, and this is what I'm called to do next. This is what is bursting out of me, and I feel so much passion and alive energy and aliveness to do this. Like, that's what these moments gift you. They really, really do. And the fruits that they offer are amazing and beautiful, and the flowers of, like all these metaphors, I'm basically saying whatever it is that's going to be on the other side of that is there and waiting for you. It's just that we have to feel what we need to feel, and that's absolutely necessary. So I really hope that this has helped anybody, anywhere, whoever is listening. And I just want to say thank you so much for listening. And this is the book that I was recommending, Women Who Run with the Wolves. It also talks about the life cycle generally. That's in one of the chapters, but it's an amazing book. I will do a different episode on this because it deserves one. So if you do have any questions or comments, please do leave it in the chat, or you can DM me on Instagram. I'm really happy to respond. And I just wish you ease and love. And even if you don't feel like you're going through a major death in your life, like, this is a time of reflection. It's just a time to really reflect on what's worked for you, what's worked, and what you want to grow next. And sometimes it is just allowing yourself to tuck in and hibernate a little bit and take care of yourself, really take care of yourself for the foreseeable months over winter. I know that in the UK it's getting dark, it's getting colder, and it is important for your nervous system to rejuvenate and recuperate, and for us to move with the seasons in that way. So I'm sending you all of the love. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time. Beyond that, I just wish you the best day, and just say thank you for being a feeling human, because that is how we definitely heal this world. So I'm sending so much love to you. Thank you for you. Take care of you. I'll see you next time.